All right, y'all. It's together. My name's Sawari here to blow your mind with some new grants. In this video, we're going to be talking about writing an LOI. And while we're doing this, I hope that you've got your pen and paper out ready to write your LOI. All right. So let's do a general overview of what an LOI is. LOI could stand for letter of intent, letter of interest, or letter of inquiry. Regardless of the acronym, they all mean the same thing and will have the same purpose. They're sent in response to an RFP, which we learned in an earlier video a few weeks ago, or a CFP, which is a request for proposals or a call for proposals. Usually, a grantor is seeking out an organizational partner to fulfill a specific request. And so, in response, potential grantees, are going to be sending out a one-page summary of their proposal. When you're putting together a LOI, you're going to be including the specific recipient's name in your address. So instead of saying "Dear Madam" or "Sir," you're going to say "Dear AT&T Foundation" or "Dear 24th District Court." Whatever the grantor's name is, you're going to include that in order to cater to them in this LOI. It's going to include your purpose, the requested amount, a brief historic overview of the organization, its background, the work that you've been doing, and why you're a credible source for getting this call met or this request fulfilled. And then you're also going to include details on the problem that you'll be solving and ideal outcomes. Make sure to mention any other funding sources that are related briefly within that as well. So, what is an LOI for? So, when you are putting together your LOI, it's important to know why LOIs are even in the picture. So, usually LOIs are sent in lieu of sending a full proposal up front. So it's a much quicker way for grantors to get an idea of the type of work that you do and what your plan is for responding to their needs for a specific project without them having to read through an entire packet or a whole bunch of different pages of work, and without you having to put together an entire full proposal of your work. So this saves times for the grantees and gives you an opportunity to share your work more widely. So you might be sending an LOI for a specific request from a grantor, or it might be a call from a more general call for proposals. Either way, whether you have a relationship with that grant dispersing entity or not, this is an opportunity for you to share more about the work that you're doing in a concise and succinct format. All right. So, what isn't an LOI for? So, you're not going to be sending an LOI to anybody about a new idea or a new project unless that's explicitly stated in the call for proposals. But for the most part, an LOI, because it includes your historical background and your experience in the work, it's going to be looking for people who have already a depth of knowledge in what they're requesting work for. You're not going to want to send it out for an unincorporated entity. So you want to have your LLC, you want to have your 501c3 status. You want to make sure that your business, your group, your organization is incorporated, because if they like your idea, they're going to follow up by asking you for a full proposal and sending you some money, hopefully. And so you want to make sure that your entity already has a legal status in order to be able to accept those funds. Another thing that LOIs are not for is to fund a specific individual. So that also ties into being an unincorporated entity. But even if you are an incorporated entity and you're trying to pay for staff or personnel cost or supply your salary, that is not going to get a favorable response from the grantor, or commercial properties. If you're trying to like buy a building or something like that, unless that's explicitly stated in the call, which I've never seen for proposals, then that's not something that you're going to want to put in your LOI. If you put any of this in your LOI, it's not going to be a very competitive summary. So, in the evaluation process, this is what they're going to be assessing your LOI on. You'll have access to the funds based upon your ability to meet these three priorities. First, the scope of your work fitting within the funder's funding priorities. So, if they are, for example, the McDonald's Foundation, and they have a charity for the McDonald's House, which serves children who are suffering from different disabilities or differently abled folks with different physical hindrances, then you're not going to want to submit a proposal for a lawn or lawn care business. That doesn't fit their funding priority. So they're not going to see that as a competitive call response to their call for proposals. The second thing is your ability to complete the proposal independently. So, what makes a LOI more competitive is you being able to demonstrate that whether or not they give you this money, this is work that you are going to be doing because it's work that you've been doing. That's more competitive because then a funder is like, you know what, I want to add my support to this. I want to put my hat on the rink because I know that they're experienced in this field. They're going to be getting the work done, and I don't have to do a lot of work to ensure that they get the work done. And they're not solely depending on me to get the work done, which translates over into the third piece, which is experience and the depth of your historic background. All right. So now we're going to be talking about the format of your LOI. So make sure you grab your pen and paper and answer these questions right now as I'm reading them off. So in your opening paragraph, when you're starting off your LOI, after you address the recipients, so dear McDonald's Foundation or dear AT&T Foundation, who are you? Say, I am the founder of Sawari Media, and I'm writing this letter of intent or letter of interest or letter of inquiry, whatever they asked for, use that exact same language, um, to request $5,000 in order to support our Prisonality magazine for the next 2 quarters, for the next 2 issues of the magazine. Okay? So make sure that you're very specific about the amount that you're asking for, what that amount is going to support, who's doing the work, what the organization is, and how you relate to the organization. Then in the second section, you're going to talk about the statement of need. What is the issue being addressed? So our magazine ensures that incarcerated citizens have the opportunity to be civically engaged and are informed about the pieces of legislation that impact them on a state and federal level. This issue matters to me because I have a lot of incarcerated citizens in my community that have expressed an interest in being civically engaged but don't have the tools to be able to do so. This is important to me, and we address this work through publishing a quarterly magazine in print at no cost to readers. They benefit from this because they don't have the funds to be able to purchase a source of this information, and they don't have access to internet, so they don't otherwise have access to this valuable information. So Prisonality closes that gap. Answer these questions for your organization. Now talk about the proposed activity. So maybe I already have the funds in my bank account to do the printing and the postage of the magazine, but maybe I want to do an event that promotes the magazine, or an event that recruits more subscribers. So then I'll talk about that activity and why adding on this supplement activity supports the organization. As another example, maybe they put a call out for wanting to include more incarcerated citizens in the voting process. And so my activity for this work might be specifically looking at who's eligible to vote in my mailing list and building out more of those subscribers in my mailing list on top of who's already eligible. And so I'll talk about what is involved in that activity. And what's unique about my approach is that there's no other resource like this. There's no other free magazine subscription that's catering to legislative activity for incarcerated men and women on a national level. And then I'll talk about the different partners that we've worked with, the different funders we've had in the past, like Black Voters Matter, like PEN America, like the Democracy Fund and Be Bold Media. I'll talk about those to ensure that the grantor is aware that we've already received report from funders that might be larger, that might be more competitive, like the Roddenberry Foundation and different entities like that. And so when they see that, they know that this is a trusted source. And if you don't yet have funders, you can talk about your partnerships in your community, different groups that you work with, and people who trust you to be able to do the work that you're doing on a local or state level. So don't be discouraged by not having any funders or foundations that you can call out, because you do have partnerships. There's no way that you're doing this work without partnerships. And then any required licenses or credentials that are significant to the project, maybe talking about the number of years that you've been doing this work. If you're licensed in any way, definitely calling that out. If you have degrees that you've earned that serve in this work, all of those credentials are going to be significant things that you can mention in the LOI. So moving towards outcomes and objectives, which I believe is the most significant and meaty part, is really listing out what your goals, what your objectives are, and outlining what the outcomes are. So the objectives are going to be what your goals are. How many incarcerated citizens are going to be receiving this newsletter? Okay. How many states it's going into? How many facilities it's going into? How many people are participating in your event? How many people are going to be receiving a backpack that wouldn't have had one already? And then outcomes are things that you see as a result of those goals being achieved. So, what do you envision as being the most successful outcome? Outline those out, and you'll prove that with their supporting this proposal, they will see these outcomes. And one could be more incarcerated citizens writing their legislators, which is something that we've already seen with the work that we're doing, or more young children having a backpack on their first day of school full of supplies in this underprivileged area, or in this underserved area, or in this impoverished area. That is a way that you demonstrate your outcomes. And I'd say have at least 3 to 4 of each of those. You can have 3 objectives and 4 outcomes in order to really support your application, or as space in this one page allows. And when I say one page, I think one page front and back is perfectly fine, but one really meaty page on the front is perfectly acceptable. If it's not printed, then I would say just one page front. If it is printed, then you can squeeze in your objectives and outcomes on the back, and maybe your closing on the back if you're running out of space. So in closing, with any extra space, feel free to add your mission or your vision statement and your reported outcomes, or we could also call impact report. If you want to say, how many people have been impacted in the past by different programs that you've done, and definitely including those numbers that can be shown, that you can prove in the work that you're doing. But some key points to remember from this presentation is that an LOI is sent in response to a request for proposals or a call for proposals. So if you see RFP or CFP, know that they're looking for an LOI, and that you can already have one prepared now after watching this presentation. But in your LOI, you're going to put a statement of purpose talking about what the work you're going to be doing and how this LOI is going to support this work. You're going to put the specific amount of funding that you're requesting, and usually in the RFP/CFP, they're going to say a range in what they'll be funding between $10,000 and $20,000. Try to put an amount that strikes in between that range, and it can definitely be on the higher end. Your historical background, your proposed activity, of course, your objectives and proposed outcomes. And I wanted to include this UMass Guidelines for Letter of Intent from the University of Massachusetts. It's a good guide. It has some extra supplementary things for students, but definitely check that out if you'd like. And having your LOI already together assists you with other potential applications and submissions. So I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, and I'll see you all next week. Bye. Thanks for watching.